Subscribe for all stories dangerous, weird, or altogether unexplainable. Have a weird or scary true story? Leave in the comments section for a chance to be in a video. What is the most unexplained, supernatural, or paranormal event you've ever witnessed? Was spending the night at a friend's house as a kid, around 12 to 13. Parents weren't home, so we decided to go out, do some ding-dong ditching, get into some young angsty debauchery. We get home, and it's around 1 or 2 in the morning. Cue a ringing of the doorbell. Naturally we think it's the cops or a pissed off neighbor. My friend had a small window that looked out onto the front porch that you couldn't really see into from outside, so we took a peek and it was calling at such a late hour. Standing at the door was an old woman in a dress and a young boy in a weird newsy outfit. Both were dressed extremely out of period, as this was the 90s, and my friend had never seen either in the neighborhood before. We ducked because we're a bit freaked. Look again no less than 10 seconds later and they're both gone. Nobody on the street walking away, no cars driving away, they were just gone without a trace. We did not sleep well. Well, Monday, I started to worry about my grandpa. The moment of worry passed, and I went about my day. Later on I posted an article about automated lawnmowers, saying that my grandpa would love this, since taking care of his yard was his hobby. Literally right after I hit share, my dad calls me. We all know this feeling. It's that drop in your stomach when you know something terrible has happened, or it's about to. The feeling that your world has changed and there's nothing you can do. Anyways, he tells me that my grandpa was rushed to the hospital with a bladder infection followed by several heart attacks, but he's still alive. I didn't think anything about worrying earlier, at least until I woke up the next morning. My dream that night was what made it click in my head, I guess. In the dream I was sitting in my grandpa's shed watching something, and he sits down next to me. Without any pretense he starts talking. The next few weeks are gonna be hard, and they will test you. Don't worry about me, in a few hours I won't have any use for it. We ended up spending what seemed like hours talking about a lot of personal things. Things I honestly didn't know or didn't remember about my grandpa. Most of which my dad and his brother have confirmed to be true, although a little exaggerated apparently. Grandpa didn't die until around noon on Tuesday, pretty much just a few hours. 3-hour time difference, after my dream. I'm not a religious, nor will I be, but for fuck's sake, what the fuck? I know the subconscious mind can do things like this, but some of the details he told me about his life are things I wasn't there for, or even alive for. When I was around 6 or 7 we had a cat that had kittens. We knew it had kittens because it was pregnant and then it wasn't anymore. The problem was that we had no idea where the kittens were. I was wondering about it and looked right at the cat and sort of thought in my mind, where are your kittens? But without using words, if that makes any sense. Immediately the location came into my mind. It was through some broken boards just above our porch that our cat could jump into from pillars on the side of the porch. I knew that they were there. I walked straight over there, climbed onto the stone pillar and looked through the hole in the boards. The kittens were right there. I've never had a similar experience again in my life. I was annoyed with my daughter because she hadn't cleaned her room in weeks, so when I walked by her room and saw her standing there, I assumed she was doing what I said. A few minutes later, she walked out of the shower in the bathroom with the towel wrapped around her and asked why I was looking at her strangely. When I asked her who was in her room, she looked scared, too. I never figured out who that was, but they didn't clean up the room, either. I'm late to this thread, but reading some of these has compelled me to post. This isn't my story but my mom's. She is an extremely rational person, but this event caused her to have such severe panic attacks that she had to return and live with her parents for 6 months. All of this happened a few years before I was born. My mom's first husband was a Navy pilot during the Gulf War. The Carrier was about 10 days into its cruise and operating with complete radio silence. She hadn't heard anything from the ship since it left, but that was to be expected. This was a war. On that night, about 10 days into the cruise, my mom woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. She saw her husband standing in the room. It wasn't an ethereal form either. He appeared solid and utterly the same. The only thing different about him was that his head was shaved. He only had one thing to say: goodbye. This whole experience startled my mom and she couldn't get back to sleep. She went to the kitchen to get some water when the doorbell rang. All military wives know what the late night doorbell means. Her husband had suffered a massive heart attack and died aboard the carrier. She was grief-ridden but reasoned that the apparition had been a hallucination born of the stress of having a spouse deployed. Besides, with his head shaved, he didn't even look that familiar. Her mother and mother-in-law flew out immediately to plan for the funeral and receive the body. She stayed strong until the first viewing of the body. Her lifeless husband was bald. In a letter from his info, the shaved head was explained as a result of a lost bet. There had been no way of knowing that his head had been shaved, and my mom suffered a minor mental break. I have a very strong danger since that's been proven terrifyingly correct both times I've had it. The first was when I was in high school training for cross country. I would usually run by this lake near my house, but one day I was close and got a very strong no feeling. It was like fighting against a very strong animal instinct to go any closer. I turned right around and went back to my house. When my mom commented on how short my run was, I explained to her what happened and she seemed alarmed, wondering if I had some sort of panic attack. A few days later, police found a body in the lake. The more recent example was when I was riding the DC Metro with my partner sometime last year. We were on the Orange Line, and needed to get off at a stop that was also on the Silver Line. We're on the train when all of a sudden I get this very strong sense again. I told my partner about it, and though at first he was skeptical, he trusted me and we switched lines. Later we found out there was a stabbing on the Orange Line that same night. My girlfriend and I were visiting my sister, who lived in a 200-year-old home in Western Ma that used to be a brothel. We were staying in her guest room, which recently had new carpet installed that was rather tall and stiff. This made it quite difficult to open and shut the door. I recall using my body weight to force it shut and needing to yank it open. As I'm trying to fall asleep, I hear something bump the door from the hallway. I assume this is my sister, her boyfriend, or their dog. A few minutes later I hear something at the door again, but this time the knob turns. I freeze as I see the knob slowly turn and the door begin to open until I see a shape resembling the silhouette of a young girl. The only child in the house is an infant. I immediately roll over onto my side, close my eyes, and attempt to convince myself that what I saw was the silhouette of the dog. I don't mention this to my girlfriend or my sister, because I don't want to alarm anyone. Fast forward a few months, my girlfriend and I are returning to Western Mott to attend my sister's wedding, and we will be staying in the same room. On the plane, my girlfriend says, "I have something I feel I should tell you about your sister's house." I immediately know where she's going with this. As it turns out, she was awake when the door opened, but she got a better look than I. She describes seeing a girl of about 5 or 6 wearing a Victorian-styled nightgown open the door and stare her in the eyes with penetrating intensity before my girlfriend looked away. I tell her my story and we decide to make sure we drink enough to pass out every night so we won't be awake if we are visited.